If you want a villain who will really give your hero a run for their money, then I've got a tip for you, and that's this. Make your villain incredibly charismatic. Now, I'm sure me saying that has just made all my fellow socially awkward introverts shrivel up inside, but don't worry, no one is asking you to be charismatic. As a writer, you get the benefit of having as much time as you need to come up with witty one liners or persuasive arguments. It might be a little more work, but it will be worth it, I promise. Later in the video, I'll go over some tips and tricks to make it a little bit easier. But before that, I want to explain why my favorite villains have always been the ones with charisma and the benefits that can come along with writing one. So let's get started. Perk number one to charismatic villains: people will always be drawn to them. How many times have you read a book or watched a movie where the villain is endlessly abusive to their henchmen, and you find yourself wondering why these people are even sticking around? Sure, you can justify it by saying they fear the villain, but if that's the case, they're still going to bolt the second they get the chance. It's a whole different story if they're there because they actually like your villain. This way, they're going to fight even harder to protect them, and if they're under some delusion about the villain's true nature, it's going to be much harder to break them out of it. Think about all the celebrities who have been revealed as horrible people over the years. How many people rose up to defend them when their character was first called into question? How many people still defend them? If you take this route with your villain, it's going to make things even harder for your hero because now they've got a whole army to contend with. Also, I'd just like to note that if you decide to go this way, please don't pull the whole caught on camera plot device. At this point, it's just cliche, and if your villain has manipulated a whole horde of people into thinking they're a good person, it's going to take more than one video for everybody to flip on them, especially if your story takes place in a world where footage can be doctored. Perk number two: it makes twists more surprising. Charisma is going to help you out a lot if you're writing a twist villain. If your audience has spent the whole first half of the story loving this character for how charming they are, they're going to be just as shocked and feel just as betrayed as the hero does when they're revealed as the villain in the second half. I will note, though, that if you're going to do this, the villain can't just be charm and wit before the twist is revealed. There does need to be some groundwork laid for them being a villain, otherwise, it's going to feel like a cop out. There are plenty of ways to do this without being in your face obvious about it, and if you'd like a future video on plot twists, let me know in the comments. The point is, the more the audience likes a character, the harder it will be for them to suspect them of being shady. And perk number three: we want to sympathize with them. That whole people are drawn to them thing applies to the audience as well, and it can score a lot of points in your villain's favor if you're planning on redeeming them later on. How many times have you watched or read a story where the villain or the anti hero has done horrible things, but you're still holding out hope that they can be redeemed because they're just so damn likable? If you decide to redeem your villain in the end, charisma will go a long way to getting the audience on their side. And if you go in the opposite direction, it's an excellent way to devastate them later on. I will add, though, to be careful not to drag this out too long. If you keep jerking your audience around, never committing to one side or the other, sooner or later they'll stop caring, and that's not what you want in a story. So now you know why it's beneficial to have a charismatic villain. The only problem now is writing one, and that's where the real trouble starts. Charisma is hard. Even for those who are naturally gifted at social interactions, aka the people I've resented all my life, it's something they have to work at to perfect. But in my time as a writer, I have come across some tips and tricks to make it a little bit easier to write. Also, I should add that even though I'm explicitly talking about villains in this video, all of these tips could easily be applied to heroes as well. My first suggestion is to give your villain some type of social status or authority. This isn't necessary to creating a charismatic villain, but it can definitely help, especially if they're meant to have a large following. We as people are inherently drawn to others we feel can offer us something. If you saw a celebrity walking down the street, even if you weren't very familiar with their work, would you stop and take a picture with them? A lot of people would, because we have a belief, be it conscious or not, that being close to those with status can lift our status as well. If you want the people in your story to flock to your villain, it will help to make them a celebrity, a religious leader, a politician, or even just a good looking rich prick. Tip number two is to give them confidence. You've probably heard before that confidence is attractive, and that's absolutely correct. If we meet someone who's confident, we immediately assume that they're not only liked by themselves, but by other people as well, and it leaves us with a sense of security. If your character can keep a smile on their face in a tense situation or find a way to have fun no matter what the circumstances are, it tells us everything's going to be okay because they think so. Number three is to have them show generosity. I know when most people think of villains, they think of mustache twirling dickheads who treat everyone around them like crap. But that's not always the case. If you want a villain with charisma, they're going to have to be nice to others, even if it's only for the sake of appearances. Maybe they hand out gifts or favors with the expectation that they'll get something in return. Or maybe they genuinely care about other people, which would add some depth to their character. And finally, tip number four is to make them relatable. Again, this is not something we tend to worry about when writing for villains, but it can help to get the other characters over on their side, or even to win over the audience if that's what you're going for in the long run. You can do this in small ways by sprinkling in little habits here and there, like them stuffing their face or not wanting to get up to get the remote. Things basically everyone has done at some point or another. Or on a larger scale, you can go into a deeper backstory that makes us understand and sympathize with them. So that's my advice on charismatic villains and how to write them. Whatever your advice is, I want to hear it, so put it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more. My name's Electra. I'm a writer, a reader, and a movie fan, and those are the kinds of things I'll be discussing in the future. I hope to see you in the next one, but in the meantime, keep writing and stay brilliant.